So a common basic tier list, I guess, is what characters will be a part of the roster for, the next Smash, because it's been kind of said plenty of times that for the most part we're not going to get the same type of roster, the same size, because this is a huge roster for a fighting game like this or a platform fighter. And yeah, I just want to kind of go into it. What I think will be separated. I find it weird, by the way. Before we get into anything, that in this list, which is all the wiki renders, that they decided, we're gonna put Pokemon Trainer together, and then you have Mythra and Pyra down here. But that's besides the point. I think we're just gonna go straight up in order, which is alphabetical, from what I understand. I don't see any reason why I would start differently, because I think we're immediately gonna get into like possible but unlikely. Because I do think Bayonetta is very important to like Smash, like in general, but I do not think it's like something on the forefront that needs to be part of the game. It's it's definitely one of those things where uh like Bayonetta is like very important for like people that played Smash 4 and has like a presence in Ultimate but isn't overly like important. Uh so I could definitely see this being possible but unlikely, especially since if you go to a more kid-oriented Smash, she doesn't really belong. I do want to preface the rest of this real quick before I forget. I don't have a number in mind of how many I need to cut. I get that a lot of people are like, we need to cut half the roster. I doubt it'll ever go that far. I'm just looking at it from a perspective of, one, what they bring to the game, two, how troublesome the licensing could be, or three, development time. I think that's the most important one. Bowser Jr., I think rework for a roster spot, and this one is probably the smallest rework, but it definitely needs to be, as uh, when it comes to the having the separate skins and all that, I do think they would probably be dropped. And a little bit of this kind of a little bit of wish fulfillment. I do think his moveset is pretty trash. It's very it fits the character as it did in Smash 4, but I do think Ultimate suffers from, the second game with the same moveset basically, and yeah. I do think Bowser is going to be main roster. Uh, I do think because Captain Falcon literally doesn't get other games that he would be a part of main roster, and that's the only reason. Also because Nintendo makes it easy. I do think Crom, and this might be a bias showing, and I want to point something out. I did really want Crom in Smash 4, but when he came to Ultimate, I was like, that's cool, but I don't think Crom will actually make it into the next game. I think a lot of the Fire Emblems are going to be kind of pushed out, which I'll get into a couple of them that I think are very interesting to talk about. Uh, and I will not be talking about Echo Fighters, because realistically, you would kind of bring Lucina back into like Marth as an Echo Fighter, because that's kind of what they were, but whatever. I think Cloud honestly has a good chance of being main roster. Uh, just in general, I and a lot of this has to do with the company that kind of owns Cloud being much more willing to, of course, participate. I think Corrin being one of the more unique Fire Emblem characters, and also kind of the not the Dark Age, but kind of the revitalization of Fire Emblem, would definitely be in main roster. I think Daisy just gets cut. I think Dark Pit gets cut. I think Dark Samus gets cut. Of these three, I would argue that Dark Samus probably has the highest, but yeah. I think Diddy Kong and Donkey Kong are both gonna be brought back in. I think Donkey Kong has its mainstay, uh, just forever. I don't see it ever not being a part of Smash. It's just Donkey Kong, and I think Diddy Kong has enough presence on its own that like Diddy Kong Racing exists, which while it's not as prevalent as it once was, still brings a lot more cadence to like its character versus Donkey Kong by itself. I do think there's a little bit of weight there. Also, I do want to say that I don't actually think any of these need a rework. Uh, I think Bowser is a lame ass character, but I doubt Bowser is going to be changed wholeheartedly to fit. I do think now this has to do with specifically Mii's not being as prevalent anymore, but I do think Mii's would be reworked to have styles of gameplay and have their kind of different moves, their custom moves, um, basically be reworked into like the different styles. So you would have like the sword fighter style, but it would be on the same character. I do think like they're gonna drop that entirely, uh, because it doesn't really make sense much anymore. Um, and like so you'll have like the generic move set of the Mii, and then you'll have basically the specials or maybe even like a few other moves that are changed in the style. And then you have the customs, which I doubt will actually get like that many. I do think Dr. Mario is possible but unlikely. A lot of this has to do with Dr. Mario just not being that important. I mean, yeah. Duck Hunt. I think this is cute, but I don't really know where I would put this. A lot of me wants to say like it's possible unlikely, which is kind of weird, but a lot of that is because of the 8-bit like ideology. I think Duck Hunt is the least played and the least remembered. Um and I feel like prevalence wise definitely gets kind of brutalized by the other 8-bit support. um I'm gonna say possible but unlikely, and by that I I should really change this to possible but maybe not, because it's not as brutal as that. Also, yeah, because these I'm sure will be part of the main roster. This could be possible, but there's a lot of outliers for this, and then these I think are just getting cut. I do think Falco and Fox will be a part of the main roster. I understand nowadays it's not as big, which is also why it's arguable that it would be possible and may not for these two. But I don't think people realize how big Star Fox was for Nintendo at one time, and also the legacy it brings from a lot of different fans. It's not like F-Zero, where F-Zero was a much smaller series for the most part. It was a big series that brought in different types of players to the different consoles, specifically the N64 and the GameCube. Ganondorf rework for a roster spot. This one is just he plays nothing like Ganondorf in any of the games. He started getting his sword attacks, which is cool, but he plays nothing like that's rememberable. I do think Ganondorf will have to be in the main roster because we'll suffer from a main villain lacking problem. Greninja, possible but maybe not. We'll get into a lot of the Pokemon issues, and I do think that Greninja would probably be cut, as there's a couple other ninja characters that I think would probably fit more. Ice Climbers, I think the amount of work in this is a possible may not. It's also an 8-bit like representative, and I think of all of them that would be supported, for spoilers, would be Rob. A lot of that has to do with the history of Nintendo in general. Of the 3 games of 8-bit that I can think of, unless there's another one I'm doing a quick scan because I don't remember, of the 8-bit like support, I do think Rob has the most, and then out of like favoritism, I do think Duck Hunt is better of a choice, and because the original Ice Climbers game sucks. I don't know if people played it, but yeah, I think Ike actually would probably be in main roster. I know it's a little odd to say, but I do think this was Brawl's big, like Fire Emblem, like hey, blah blah blah. I understand that Marth existed, but Marth, like at that point, was in Melee, and most of the games at that point, if you go to the timeline of going back to Melee, you didn't play a Marth game first. You played a Roy game first, which we'll get into. But with Brawl, if you looked at the Fire Emblem characters, you were playing an Ike game. So I do think Ike has representatives there. I think Incineroar actually would probably come back. And I think this is probably the least likely to get a rework. I think the character plays exactly how you would want to play from a pseudo grappler, and also at the same time plays exactly how I would kind of imagine from a Pokemon translation. Inkling, I think makes sense. Isabelle, I think makes sense as well. Jigglypuff, this is a weird statement. I think of the original 12 is probably the least likely to come back, and that's always been the case for Jigglypuff. That's just because you were a Kirby clone at the start, and you were very kind of not forgettable, but very like not amazing for it. There's another character I do want to talk about from the original 12 that is possible, and by is possible I mean very unlikely, but I just think Jigglypuff personally is very it of the 12 is possible to be locked. I do think no rework is needed though. Joker, possible but maybe not. It really depends on like Persona situation at the time, which we're getting close to possible release or possible announcement, so we'll probably see. The only reason I don't think main roster is because like of the ownership of the character. I really hope that they replace Arsene personally. And also, the reason I say possible is while Joker is the most recognizable part of the game, maybe you go with another character in Persona. It's one of the few like instances on here where like you get replaced by another character because they are recognizable. I understand it's not the same as Joker being super recognizable, but I feel like Persona has been much more in the limelight the past like since this has been announced and showcased in Ultimate. So maybe I don't know. I think it's probably the highest possibility if I were to rank them. I think Ken will probably be fine. Part of me wants to say no, but King DDD will, of course. King K. Rool, I thought of maybe playing like in rework or even possible, but I do think K. Rool is fine in main roster. Kirby probably should get a rework. This Link has already gotten a successful rework. I do think it will probably get a small rework in general, but it won't be a rework for the roster spot. It'll be a rework because that's just Link in general. Lil Mac, I do think will still be a part of this. Lucario. See, the thing about Pokemon is that we're gonna get into like a couple Pokemon problems. And Japan loves Lucario, so like it's gonna be a part of the main roster. I just hope it gets a rework. Lucas, I'm gonna put that because of we haven't like I think worldwide there's still a lot of like meh about Lucas because the game doesn't exist. But yeah, Lucina, I kind of want to see this be reworked for a roster spot in general. I do think Lucina would be part of the main roster in just like that case. Mostly because if Marth is part of it, then Lucina will be. Luigi, of course, is going to... I mean, literally, you have to put the Smash Brothers. I do think Luigi will be changed again. But that's a lot of things. I do think Marth is deserving of the main roster. These two literally just need slightly different movesets. A lot of arcs need to be changed. But that's it. I think Mega Man, possible, but maybe no. It depends how Capcom kind of works. I understand, like, there's a lot of weird stuff with Mega Man right now. Uh, but I I want to see Mega Man. I love Mega Man personally, but at the same time, I hope he doesn't get new games. Meta Knight, of course, I think it's pretty prevalent. I think Mewtwo gets cut. And a lot of this has to do with we're gonna get into the Pokemon problem where while Lucario is well loved and Incineroar I think is like exclusive, not exclusive, but is like highlighted enough where I can definitely see it just coming back because it is. Jigglypuff is like meh enough. Mewtwo, while being like its own character, I do think it suffers from just like if we're cutting the roster, I think Mewtwo and Pichu in general are two characters that are just going to get cut because of the size differential between other series. Because it's not like Mario where you can split it up into like multiple eras. Pokemon, like, yeah, you could be like Gen 1. No, it's just Pokemon. So, yeah. I think Game & Watch, I think the amount of history behind Game & Watch kind of makes it a shoo-in. But maybe that's me. Ness, I think, will be a part of it. But this was the other example of possible, but maybe not. And this is probably the least likely to not be put in. I was thinking about it as I was talking, and I do think Ness actually probably just gets a roster spot. Olimar, I think, will always be a part of Smash at this point. Pac-Man, of course, it's not owned, but I mean, if we're being honest, Bandai Namco works on the game, so yeah. Now, I thought real long and hard about some of these weird ones because you look at Palutena and you look at Pit. These games do not matter, and so I'm going to say possible, but maybe not. The games do not matter. It's not like the 3DS just came out. Ultimate's big tagline was everyone was here, so you couldn't exactly exclude them, but I don't think anybody would have minded them not being there. I do think of any of them that will be brought forward, it would just be Pit, with Palutena being second, and I do not think this one works. Peach, of course, gets brought back. Pichu gets cut. Pikachu is, of course, the face of the franchise, gets cut. I just think in general, Kid Icarus is possible to not even show up. That's personally. I think this gets reworked. I think it goes back to just Charizard only, or it gets reworked entirely to cut Ivysaur. I do not see Ivysaur being brought back as a Pokemon. Because like Squirtle's very recognizable and very like, oh, that's cute Squirtle. And I understand they're going for the into the mid stage, into like it shows evolution. That's cool, and Pokemon fans love it. Ivysaur is one of the lamest Pokemon, but whatever. I think the Belmonts are just. Which one would actually get like? That's an interesting question. I didn't think of this. I do think. Oh man, this might be a Konami problem. I saw Snake. Sorry, I got distracted. Man, I kind of just want to. I kind of want to sit on this and think about it because, like, I forgot how brutal this is gonna be for some of these characters. Huh. I wonder what the rights are for Castlevania. That would probably answer it. So I think it's So, oh man, which one would be put up there? I think the other one gets cut. I think it's more likely that you play as Richter. Why? Because that's the newer ones. Or maybe you play because they're classic. Oh man, I don't know. This is a toss-up entirely. You could put whichever one. I like this one more, Richter. So Ridley, I think just because of the history behind Ridley in general, I do think a rework is needed, which is funny, but Robin, I think, would be a part of this. Uh, do I? Yeah, we'll do it. Rob, I mentioned earlier that I think Rob would be the kind of 8-bit showcase. Plus, it has a lot more of power in comparison. In like, it has a lot more meaning than Duck Hunt Ice Climbers from that era. Rosalina and Luma, I think, just gets more and more likely as time goes on. Roy, I do think Roy would be a part of this. I understand there's a lot of people that would be like, why Roy? Um, I don't think people actually understand how important it was that Roy's games came out. Like, and people bought them because of the introduction of Smash. Fire Emblem basically exists because of Roy. Yeah, you could go and emulate and find a translation of Marth's game eventually, or you could like get the you could import the games and get into that way. It was easier to wait and play Roy's games. Um, we have Ryu, which I think if Ken is gonna be there, you of course have Ryu. I mean, I don't think Samus ever goes away. I do think Sheik, and this is my personal opinion, needs to be cut. A lot of this has to do with Ganon. If Ganondorf isn't reworked, gets cut as well. These old ass Ocarina of Time garbage needs to leave. I don't care. Okay, you already have the freaking links, which we're gonna talk about that one. Shulk, just because Xenoblade is still relevant, yeah, but at the same time, I could definitely see, like, if the definitive edition of the first Xenoblade didn't come out, I could definitely see an argument for it to possible, but maybe not. I think I I put Richter there. I'm putting Simon cut. Snake, possible. It's the same Konami problem. Also, apparently there's a lot of issues with animations with Snake. In general, this is also Sega stuff. Toon Link, I think a rework entirely, but still want it there. And then Villager, I think a rework entirely, which I understand there's a little bit of a weirdness here because I'm putting Isabelle, you know, the clone character in quotes, in main roster as fine with the Villager. I think Villager has some differences you could do from like New Horizons and so on that you could kind of bring forth. There's also like a lot of player specific things that you can kind of do that would be kind of funny. But I think a rework is also just necessary. Um, Wario, I think it's Wario. Wii Fit, I actually don't see a problem with Wii Fit. Very forgettable character. Wolf, possible, but maybe not. I think you already have Fox and Falco. I don't think Wolf needs to be, you know, too prevalent. Yoshi, of course. This gets cut. Get these Ocarina of characters. This is a massive rework. I think that Zelda in general is probably the character that needs Ganondorf and Zelda. Get the hint? Get the hint here? But needs the rework the most. Like, incredible how badly I hate Zelda in all iterations of Smash. Zero Suit. Now this is an interesting case because you look at Samus and then you have Ridley, which I think needs a slight rework just to make it like more apparent of like Ridley is. I do think more. This is probably the most likely possible because Zero Suit is like super iconic now. Um, but it's entirely possible that they leave this out for a bunch of other reasons that kind of go in like weird areas. But Hero, I mean, possible but maybe not. It's Hero. Banjo Kazooie. I think this is Microsoft, which I mean they're always willing to do it, but please rework. Yeah, I think Microsoft owns Banjo Kazooie now, right? That's the order of operations. Yeah. I think they're gonna be willing to do it. Of all the companies, I think Microsoft's just gonna be willing to do it because they don't. They have a weird business model, basically. I think Terry's actually one of the few DLC that's possible. Like, I guess that's not true. You have these three here. That I think Hero's the least likely. This is Byleth. I think Byleth might be possible for a main roster slot, which I think is Fire Emblem Hell now. How many? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm missing one. Am I? No. So that's 5, and then possible 6, 7, or 6 if they do like some weird shit. I mean, yeah. Did I really only cut Crom? Okay, we have to change this. Huh. I only cut Crom. Apparently I hate Crom. That's whack. But I do think Byleth just gets here because of recency bias. You know what? It's entirely, and I've thought about this. I was gonna argue that technically you could cut Marth, but I think like origins for characters is kind of important. But yeah, Min, I think I so it's Nintendo first, but I don't think Arms got anything. So I think it's just cut. Like I think we get farther and farther away from Arms being used. Possible, but maybe not. Depends on Mochang. I think this gets cut. I think Sephiroth is really cool to see introduced. Like, that's awesome. Cool. I do not see it getting approved. I think Cloud gets approved just because, hey, like, you know, Final Fantasy VII still has a big spark. I think Sephiroth just gets cut. I do think Pyra and Mithra are both cut, which, I mean, they're one character, so it's kind of a cheat that they're two, so it looks bigger, but whatever. I'm a guy. We always lie about size. Kazuya, I think, is more than likely to not be, but it's always possible. And this is probably gonna be the weird thing. I think Sora is more than likely coming back in main roster. I understand there's a lot of people that are like, yo, Sora's the least likely. I disagree wholeheartedly. In one, these agreements last for a decent amount of time, unless they're very, very specific. And two, Kingdom Hearts 4 exists. And I think having, like, if Smash comes out first, having that be like, yo, Kingdom Hearts 4, baby. Like, I think it's a no-brainer. So how many do we cut? We cut 5, 10, 15, 16. And then, right? Hold on, let me actually count. That's 5, that's 10, that's 15, that's 6. Okay, right. 16, and then we add 4 more, so we cut 20 are here, so that's 36. If these do not get reworked, then I do want them gone in general. That's just me. Or they probably will be. So it's possible that we get rid of 36 characters, which I think is actually a little higher than I expected. Some of these are very unlikely to, but there's a bit of a muddled area. I do think like Terry's the least likely to actually not come back from DLC. I think Joker is possible as hell. I think Zerasu and Wolf as well. Sonic, Sega is probably willing to play ball. Snake, it depends. Konami seems much more willing to talk to people nowadays, especially since, you know, there's kind of stuff coming out for these two. But this depending on whether people actually care about Kid Icarus. I understand Sakurai actually, like, you know, loves these, but I mean, if there's no caring, there's no caring. This is just Mother 3 problems. Capcom, 8-bit garbage, Pokemon overindulgence, Dr. Mario being a clone and also just, like, not relevant nowadays. Like, Dr. Mario loses relevancy as we go along, and Bayonetta being, of course, Bayonetta. Yeah, I think this is pretty fair. I think there's a couple odd choices that I'm, like, kind of iffy on feeling, but hey, I guess I should have planned one of which which character would be the most likely to be cut, like out of all of them, and I straight up think it's Piranha Plant. I think Piranha Plant's the most likely to get cut, or Pichu. Actually, I'm changing it to Pichu. Pichu's the most likely to get cut. So yeah, there you go.